Hi, friends. It is Wednesday, the 21st of April. We're getting a little spring around here, even though it's gotten cold these last few days. And I've decided, after Hartgrove's book on staying put and paying attention, The Art of Stability, that I'm going to read from a book by Reynolds Price, who was a Duke Divinity English professor for many years, suffered a spinal cancer and became a paraplegic later in his life, was a prolific writer. He died in 2011, but he taught these beloved English classes in English literature, and also taught, one of his passions was biblical translation. So this book is called Three Gospels, and this is the last part of it, which picks up a gospel rendition that he wrote himself. So I'm going to use the first couple of days here to set the stage for that. At Duke University twice in recent years, I have led a seminar in the study of the Gospels of Mark and John. All the students have been undergraduates, a few of them with considerable prior awareness of New Testament literature, but most with virtually none. My only suggestion to them on the question of their eligibility for the seminar is that they bring to it minds not shut by the blinders of an unquestioning religious fundamentalism. Through the first 2 months of the term, line by line in my own plain translations, we discuss the historical, narrative, and religious connotations of Mark, the oldest life of Jesus, the oldest gospel, and John, the most mysterious and unaccountable for, once we conceive it as a problem. Despite the fact that a great weight of recent scholarship denies that we can look to the Gospels for an experience comparable to that we find in works of modern biography, I nonetheless call the two Gospels lives. And I call them lives since, whatever their theological aims, Mark and John are first of all brief attempts to record the crucial events in a certain order, and the meaning within those events of a single temporal earthly existence. Their human subject led, to be sure, an existence that Mark and John thought of indispensable meaning for the transformation of human life. And the nature of that imperative transformation is central to what their two books thrust toward us so powerfully, for all their elliptical strangeness. Modern attempts to deny that the actual events of a particular human life, arranged in a meaningful narrative order, are the bedrock of all the gospel stories, are ignorant of the universal motive and history of narrative. Next in the seminar's work, we pass briskly through the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, with their long detours into ethical discourse, and the students are encouraged to read the remainder of the canonical New Testament, the Acts of the Apostles, Paul's letters, and the other letters and tracts. Then we read the major surviving uncanonical or apocryphal Gospels. Apokryphos in Greek means hidden away, that is, not read in public, not widely accepted. Most interesting among them are the Proto-Gospel of James, the Gospel of Thomas, and several less cogent early documents pertaining to Jesus and the Jesus sect. At midterm, as we prepare to write substantial seminar papers, the students and I agree upon a common set of sources for our ground plans. As a general rule, we are free to use Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, the one other surviving lengthy first-century narrative concerned with the effects of Jesus' life, the undisputed letters of Paul, and those other canonized documents which may at least have originated in the first generation of men and women who knew Jesus of Nazareth: the letter to the Hebrews, the letter of James, the first letter of Peter, the three letters of John, and the Revelation of John. A reader may wonder why I set the students and myself such a task when we already have 4 impressive Gospels, 2 of which stand an excellent chance of proceeding directly and at only second-hand from eyewitnesses of Jesus' acts and teaching. The simplest justification for the effort, and one that has lain behind the thousands of attempts on Jesus that have burdened libraries for the past 2 millennia, is that the career of a particular Palestinian Jew of the first century and the effects of that life on world history have proved so magnetic in their mystery as to demand ceaseless watch and question by human beings whose minds have ranged from the caliber of Augustine, Aquinas, Luther, and Calvin, through numerous lunatics, sadists, masochists, plain readers, and selfless ministers to the sufferings of others. A more precise explanation of why I set my seminar to work on further attempts would center on a feeling that I share with most students of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each one of the four offers a balance of readily credible acts and speeches that are found in no other early source, and that beg to be shuffled together in one account, which offers all the crucial acts and sayings of one impressive man. The famous lost Diatessaron, and through the four, which Tatian composed in the Syriac language in the 2nd century, was only the most widely circulated of such attempts at compiling a satisfying single Jesus story, a harmony of all known gospel themes. Anyone aware of the contents of the four will have long since shuffled their unique findings into an at least mental harmony. The familiar Christmas story, for instance, which underlies so much of the art and ongoing devotion of the West in a shuffling of Matthew's and Luke's special strands. With similar aims, then, and on that common base of evidence, the students and I begin to write our individual apocryphal gospels. In the first 2 rounds of the seminar, students have produced the most surprisingly excellent sets of papers I've received in nearly 4 decades of teaching. And as I have learned to expect, the student gospels generally prove to be a good deal freer than mine in arranging, discarding, or elaborating the oldest evidence and hints. A number of them, for instance, write from the points of view of women mentioned in the canonical accounts. Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary of Magdala, the nameless woman cured of a hemorrhage. My gospel, on the contrary, hews closely to Mark's generally convincing chronology for the life, work, and death of Jesus, an outline that seems to come from Mark's main informant, who was almost surely Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, the fisherman from Bethsaida, whom Jesus named Kepha, or rock. It is fashionable now, as indeed it was for Papias in the 2nd century, or Papias probably, to deny that Mark preserves a trustworthy outline for Jesus' career. But I feel, with many older scholars, as learned and discerning as Albert Schweitzer and C.H. Dodd, that a thoroughly credible, if hardly exhaustive, temporal, geographic, and psychic progress can be inferred from Mark's bare account. Into Mark's loose-limbed literary itinerary, then, I've inserted certain events and speeches which seem genuine to me from Matthew, Luke, and John, and I've added as well the apparently genuine but unattached episode of Jesus' response to the woman taken in adultery. It is not a part of the oldest manuscripts of any one of the canonical Gospels, though it is often placed for convenience in John. I've made such inclusions into Mark's outline only when they seem indispensable for the fullest understanding of Jesus that we can hope to reach if we try to keep faith with the oldest witnesses and with the dim but likely outline they provide for his short career. With all the dozens of contradictions in the details of their stories, the ultimate arc of Jesus' career remains the same throughout. I set the additions to Mark's outline at points where they serve both a narrative and an emotional logic and do part justice to at least 2 aspects of Jesus' nature: his apparently inexhaustible compassion for human wrongdoing and suffering, and his ferocious anger at the intractable presence of evil in the world and the agonies it produces in creatures, good and bad. Such a shuffling of narrative and teaching sources is frowned upon by many New Testament scholars as being disruptive of what they take to be mutually exclusive narrative and theological errands of the four gospel writers. I dissent, with no sense of error, from their prohibition. Most early writers in the Jesus sect dissented likewise, and for one large reason. The first three Gospels were quite surely built by just such a process of conflation and interleaving of multiple sources, oral and written, historical and legendary. And since the most inexplicable acts, the most astounding claims of Jesus are described by the oldest writers with a flat-footed refusal to heighten their marvels, most of those events mix well with one another. From whichever gospel we draw them, they seem so starkly matter-of-fact that in general they lie together easily. Mark's rushed and secretive man, Jesus, finally stands with no necessary adjustment of focus beside John's divine Son of God, announcing his blazing transcendence in the daylight of Yahweh's Temple Mount in the presence of enemies. So, won't that be fun? A little take, Reynolds Price take on these Gospels that he has translated and looked at all his life with his students. I hope you'll enjoy joining me in doing that. Let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I wonder if you were one of Reynolds Price's students, how you might do your term paper based on the Gospels and putting them in some order that makes sense to you, or from a perspective that makes sense to you. I think it'd be a great creative endeavor, and might even have the possibility of deepening our faith. Have a great day.